pounder. You can look at his tail right there. These fish are spawned out. Black lips, black tail. Definitely been fanning the beds. Post-spawn bite. We've moved up shallow. We're only in about 6 feet of water right now. They're holding really tight to this cover. With the higher sun, we're starting to see a little bit of activity as these clouds are rolling in. Nice. That.
Back of the pocket.
And
you got to keep talking.
We've got a train wreck going on right now because as I was talking, Dad just sit into that. Couple pounder?
Yeah.
What's that, 8? 9?
9, I think. 9 keepers.
9 keepers. All right, guys. Just pulled back in the shop, putting gear away from spending yesterday in Kentucky, fishing Dale Hollow. Dale Hollow is one of my favorite lakes to fish. It's a smallmouth factory, but since moving to Alabama, I don't get to fish it quite as much as I used to. I still make a couple trips a year up there, primarily in the late fall and in the mid-spring to chase smallmouth. You guys have seen my video from there in the fall, catching big smallmouth on football jigs. One of my favorite trips I take each year. Another trip that we take is always in the month of May, whenever the shad are spawning on Dale Hollow. The smallmouth fishing can be electric. However, this year, with some other scheduling, I went up about 3 weeks earlier than what I normally fish for the shad spawn. Some guys that I know online, share fishing reports with, said the shad spawn was getting going. Areas I typically found them in, I didn't see a lot of shad activity. However, we still had a really good trip. So typically on the shad spawn, we're going to fish jerk baits, swim baits, top water, some live scoping techniques, things like that, where the smallmouth are pushing shad up against bluff walls where the shad are spawning. Yesterday, however, caught one good smallmouth, but everything else was some really nice largemouth, which Dale Hollow is becoming known for as well. Yesterday was a jig bite. So I want to go over how I run my jig rods on the boat. If I'm on a pure jig bite, what I'm throwing, why I'm throwing it. So post spawn, the bass typically aren't chasing bait and everything immediately. We're right after the spawn. Give them a couple weeks, they'll start chasing the shad. They'll go after your jerk baits, your swim baits again. Right now, they're a little more laid back. They're holding tight to cover. Some of the smallmouth are roaming a little bit on points, but they're not actively chasing bait fish. That's my cue. When I see that on live scope, when I see that out on the water, I'm gonna go to a pure jig fishing day. Anytime I'm fishing a highland reservoir, something like Dale Hollow, and I hit that pure jig fishing day, I like to run 3 rods on the deck. I run a deep water jig, I run a mid-depth casting jig, and I run a flipping stick. That way I can start out on the secondary points that are typically in that 18 to 25 foot range, work my way back into the pockets where I'm going to get more in the 10 to 12 foot range, and then eventually all the way to the backs of these pockets where there's still going to be some of the smaller nest garters, and you can pick those off with a flipping stick around heavy cover. So starting out on the points, my go-to on Dale Hollow, or really any lake where I'm going to fish a football jig in deeper water, I'm going to run something a little more natural. Anything out in that depth range, I'm looking to imitate crayfish. This is a Dirty Jigs tackle, 3/4 ounce football jig. Color is the go-to. This is what over half of my football jig box is. I've got a few watermelons, a few PB&Js, a few black and blues. This is what I'm throwing at least 3/4 of the time. Just a basic beaver style bait on the back of it. I have ran rage crawls. I know guys that run rage crawls. I like the Berkeley Max Scent Brush Hog or the Missile D-Bomb, something like that. I think it gives it a little more natural body with smaller appendages. I tend to get bit more on that. You can run rage crawls, a lot of guys do. I like more of a compact look, more of a natural crayfish color when I'm fishing out that deep. I'll always start on the points, especially when I know the fish are in post spawn, because I don't 100% know where they are at that moment. They're going to be somewhere between the backs of the pockets and those secondary points as they start transitioning out to summer. I start there running the football jig. That's what I caught the big smallmouth on first thing in the morning. Low light conditions, they were still cruising those points. A little bit higher on the points in about 20 foot of water. As the day went on, they're going to go deeper. Now, midway back in the creek pockets to the very back in the heavy covers where we did most of our damage today. As I'm transitioning from that point, I work my way towards the back of the pocket. That's when I pick up the casting jig. This one's a 1/2 ounce. I broke off a 3/8 right at the end of the day, and this was the closest one I had to that color. Typically, I run a 3/8 ounce jig. My favorite one is the impact jigs that you guys saw in the Lake Fork video. We'll run a football jig, more of a slim head on it. Same thing, I'm gonna run the D-bomb trailers. The difference is when I get under that 12 foot range, 12 foot, 10 foot and under, I go from trying to imitate a crayfish to trying to imitate a bluegill. So you guys can see the crayfish imitating jig. This one is set up more to imitate a bluegill. I'm gonna keep this one on the bottom a lot more out on the points. I'm gonna give these ones, especially from about now, early May through the end of June, when these largemouth are keying in on bluegill, I'm gonna give this a little more action. I'm gonna hang it on limbs, hang it on grass, and I'm gonna pop it off to try to imitate a bluegill. I go with a more of a lighter color, definitely getting some green in there, a little more shine to it. Your blues work really well too in this situation. My favorite color for that, as you guys saw in Lake Fork, Missile D-bomb color, grass candy, my absolute favorite when it comes to bluegill fishing. Now, as I get, say, under 6 feet, that's when I'm gonna get more into the flipping stick. I'm doing the same thing that I'm gonna do with the casting jig, except I'm intentionally putting this in very heavy cover. So this is set up almost identical, almost the same color, almost the same size, except this is essentially a deconstructed jig. So you have 3/8 ounce flipping weight pegged with a rubber stopper. Very important feature here, if you guys can see it, there is a small rubber bead in between the skirt and the 3/8 ounce weight. I run a punching skirt when I flip, especially if I've been getting bit on jigs a lot. If the bite gets a little bit tougher, I'll take that skirt off and just run the D-bomb. I started off doing that yesterday, and for some reason they wanted that bulk, they wanted that a little more meat to the bait, and I would get bit running the same D-bomb. And then I run Gamakatsu flipping hooks. These come with a ring on them. A lot of guys run the straight shanks. If I'm going to punch and go through a lot of thick, heavy grass, I'll run a straight shank hook. I like the ring on my hooks when I'm just flipping with an offset shank. I can hold the D-bomb on it a lot better, and having that hinge, in my opinion, allows me to snake this through cover, through brush, and things like that a lot easier. If you keep the hook point just barely buried into that D-bomb, it's extremely hard to hang this up. All my rods, when I'm jig fishing, I like to run 15-pound of Brazex, with the exception of my flipping stick. So as far as line goes on this, I run a 40-pound braid tied down to a 15-pound leader. This is a shorter leader, a lot shorter than what you see me run when it comes to live scoping. This leader is only about 3 foot long, just to give it a little less visibility in the water. There's also times I'll flip on straight braid. It just depends on water clarity and the way the fish are acting. Dale is a notoriously clear lake, so I'm going to run the leader there. That's my setup for jig fishing. By mid-morning, I'd already put all the other rods away on the deck because I knew it was going to be a jig bite all day. So I would just start on the secondary points, going back into where these fish had spawned. Start there, work my way to the back. The bigger ones were typically on the points. The females would come off first. And as I went to the back of the point, we would get back to the pockets. Excuse me. We would get more bites, but they'd be your smaller nest garter type fish. So that is my jig setup. We'll continue to show you guys, you know, different setups, different tackle, different gear. If there's anything you guys want to see, anything you'd like me to talk about, please drop a comment. Like and subscribe as always. Heading to Gunnersville here in 2 weeks for some more post-spawn action. So hopefully get into some swim baits and things like that out on the creek channels. So as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.